So we come to the 18th gate. Work on what has been spoiled by the father and the mother. And this is the gate of correction, and this is the gate of a challenging authority. It is the gate of spontaneous critical capacity. We have the right angle cross of service. That is the 18, the 17, the 52, and the 58. This is a deeply logical cross. It's all in the understanding circuitry. The cross is called the cross of service. The 18 is often deeply misunderstood. That is, that the gift genetically of the 18 is the gift of taste. That is, to be able to know what one likes and what one doesn't like at any given moment. The fact that one does not like something, however, does not mean that one can change it or fix it. And that to criticize what cannot be fixed is not criticism. It's punishment. And that the 18th gate is part of the logical collective sharing process. If you have the 18th gate and you know what you like and what you don't like, you want to share it with the other. It is here to be able to challenge authority, not to eliminate the authority, but to verify it. And if the authority cannot be substantiated, then to challenge the authority and replace it. Understanding. This is not emotional. It's not supposed to be emotional. When somebody says to you, out of the 18, you do not dress properly, it is not emotional. And the fact that you can only dress the way you do, and the fact that it's not your fault, is not something that's going to be fixed. And that you can't turn collective recognition into something that's personal. Above the line it says, the vigilance and determination to uphold and defend basic and fundamental human rights. You know, all those people that give the 18 a bad reputation, read this heading. That's what they're great at. To see the collective need for proper authority, legitimate authority, and to challenge any authority that isn't legitimate, for the benefit of human rights, not for the benefit of their ego, not for any emotional satisfaction, but for the benefit of the collective. The 18.1, conservatism. The adherence to traditional patterns despite or in spite of changing circumstances. The earth exalted, and always recognize where the earth and sun is present, that this will fix the nature of a cross. The earth exalted, gradual modification to avoid eventual upheaval. The potential to correct through gradual modification of judgments. Think about the difference in the movement, and here we have this movement in the stream and in the wheel. The 18 leads to the 48 in the wheel. The 18 leads to the 48 in the stream. They are deeply connected to each other, very similar to each other. Think of the 18 as a leaky faucet. Every drop represents a moment-by-moment judgment call. A moment-by-moment like or dislike. And yet one like or one dislike is not enough. It has to add up over time. It has to fill the well of the 48. It has to lead to depth and profundity. You see, everything about the logical understanding process is about repetition. And that means that you have to be able to see over and over again something that needs to be corrected, and you have to see over and over again how you can possibly deal with that correction and how that correction can be collectivized before you make an attempt at that correction. 18s do not have the solution. They know what is wrong or what is right, what they like or what they don't like in the moment, but they don't have a solution as to what to do with it or how to experiment with an improvement to it. That's not their place. The detriment, Jupiter in detriment, the patriarch whose rigidity guarantees deterioration. This is the potential to refuse to correct. That is, this is the potential to refuse to challenge authority. And these people, because they never challenge the authority, only complain about the authority. My husband's a jerk. He does this and that and that and that and that. But they never tell their husband. Everything about the first line of the 18 is about whether or not there is the power to challenge authority. And remember something. In this whole logical stream, the 16, the 48 in the talent, and then here to the 18, there's still no juice. There's still no energy. That's why there's so much pressure on 58s to give their energy collectively to collective processes. And that the 18 can be aware that it needs to challenge what is incorrect and has no power to do so. So the first thing to understand about challenging authority is that challenging authority seeks out allies that will back it in its challenge. You know, this is what we call going out and getting a petition. You know, united we stand, divided we fall. All of that is here. In other words, to really mount a challenge to the established order and the collectivity requires a collective challenge. Second line, terminal disease. I love this line. You know why? The second line. The second line is walking around its house, not paying attention to the outside world, but just taking care of its life, not wanting to be distracted. The recognition that what has been spoilt is irreversible. The gift of the second line is to be able to recognize what cannot be challenged, what cannot be fixed. And not challenging it or not being able to fix it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing that's so strong that you can't challenge it or fix it. And it doesn't mean it's a good thing that's so strong that you don't challenge or try to fix it. It's simply about recognizing what cannot be challenged and what cannot be fixed for good or bad. Pluto exalted. Acceptance and strength derived from faith in spiritual regeneration. Isn't that lovely? Now think about this. This cross of service, this business about the nature of disease, that regeneration is always possible the moment one lets go of trying to challenge something that cannot be challenged. It's so important. When you recognize that there is something that is so powerful that it cannot be challenged, to surrender to that is the healthiest thing that you can do. In that surrender comes your spiritual regeneration. There are so many people born with this who say, the female archetype in my life or the male archetype in my life is useless. I can never change them. I can never fix them. So I'm never going to be able to live with them. And I always tell them, because you can't change them or fix them, you have a chance to know them for what they are. There is something very important for all 18s to know. That what they want to correct has to be of value to the majority of the collective. And if they can't see how it's of value to the majority of the collective, don't bother. The moon in detriment, the futile raging against the wind, the refusal to accept that there is no potential of correction. And these are the people that kill themselves slowly with bitterness. They try to constantly challenge what cannot be challenged. They constantly try to fix what cannot be fixed. The 18-2s in my life who never stopped telling me that I should stop smoking. They will never stop telling me. It is not going to do them any good. It is a waste of their breath and time. It's pointless. It is useless. And it pisses them off because they want me to stop and they can't do that. And they annoy me. So when I see them coming, I pull out a cigarette. It's just the way that it works. I lived a time in my life where I was deeply serious. And the thing that I like about human design is that it's simply one endless joke. It really is. The joke is so obvious. It's so obvious. The third line. The zealot. I love that. Think about what it's like to have a trial and error zealot. I mean, one moment they're challenging this thing absolutely ferociously, and 10 days later it's gone. And of course, what happens to them is that they try to challenge things, and if it doesn't work, they go and try and challenge something else. The 18. This is a place where people hurt themselves. That is, this is a place where people punish themselves. They take this whole process and they say that I am inadequate, I am not good enough. And they see their inability to correct things as their fault. That they see that they don't have the power to change things and they don't have people in their life who cooperate with their need to change them. And they get deeper and deeper into self-criticism and pointing the finger at the other. And that's not what the 18 is here for. That's not how it lives out its natural process. The 18 is essential for us. It's the beginning of being aware about what we like and what we don't like that can become art itself. And it's not about being personal, and this is the whole trap. There's this wonderful word in the Bible, it's called the goad. And the goad was a prod that was used to prod the oxen. Like a stick. And this is what the 18th gate is. It's a prod. It isn't saying, do it again because you did it badly. Do it again because you're inadequate. do it again because your partner's inadequate. It's not saying any of those things. What it's saying is, do it again. That's all. Do it again. Do it again. Mastery is rooted here in the 18th gate. At the moment that you can recognize what you like and what you feel the collective will like, because you're part of that collective, that's the moment that you found your mastery direction in life. And that 18th gate will always be able to tell you that the piece of music you just played, you can play better. But that is always true. It is endlessly true. It is infinitely true. That each time you do it, you take yourself to another level. That repetition leads ultimately to mastery. Because it's so collective, because it's so dependent on the other for energy. This logical collective system has a deep need to socially interact to be fulfilled. And of course, in the lower trigram, that gift isn't there. Those 18s don't know there's a 58 at the other end. They're often deeply frustrated with constantly recognizing what needs to be fixed or corrected and being powerless to do anything about it. And then suddenly being empowered to do something about it, but never at their own timing. And everything is about timing. You know, if you're a generator and somebody asks you what's wrong, you can tell them. And if you're a projector, you can be invited to contribute your criticism. And if you're a manifester, you're going to have to ask permission. Please, can I give you my feeling, my opinion, whatever, about what you just did? There are formulas. It's all a formula. And think about this, because it's one of the tragedies, is that everyone that you've met in your life, who's a part of your life, that didn't enter in through that formula, you can never change that. You can't change that. You know, you can come to a new cycle 7 years later and begin again. But the way in which you met them and the way in which you took them into your life is cellular, and it stays with you for 7 years. Be clear about how you enter into anything now, whether it's casual or not. If you are yourself, you have the right timing. If you have the right timing, you get your life. The energetic obsession to clean house. This third line. Neptune exalted. The disillusion of old forms at an acceptable price. An obsession with correction and its critical potential. These people are always banging into the other and always seeing the other as being wanting. Because they always can. And always will. Look, if you're an 18 and you're in a relationship, the only thing that can tell you whether your relationship is good or not is your authority, wherever that happens to be. Not your capacity to see that at any given moment, half of the things your partner does you don't like. Because that's not what conditions whether you belong in that relationship or not. Because it's collective. It's not personal. And the only thing that can save you from making it personal is by living out your type and your authority. Jupiter in detriment, rigid judgmentation that creates as many problems as it solves. An obsession with correction that does not bring satisfaction. You know, you keep on insisting that somebody corrects based on what you see is wrong, and it isn't going to satisfy you. You're never satisfied. You know, this is the joke about the master. The master never gets to the point of satisfaction. Otherwise, they could never play the game of master. They just transfer that to their students. It's an endless process. Logic has to be constantly substantiated because of the great fear of mutation, screwing everything up. And everybody's got to start to figure it all out all over again. Like the physicists now trying to make sense of a neutrino with mass universe. They're going nuts. When you get to the fourth line and you get to the upper trigram, through its transpersonal quality, because this is a collective gate, you have a real opportunity to find the social allies you need in order to have the strength to challenge. And it's a great line. It's called the incompetent. You know, it's one of my favorite lines to read people. Excuse me, you have the line of incompetency. It's nice, eh? What makes you laugh is your own prejudices. I mean, after all, because we have these prejudices. Difficulties as a result of inadequacies that cannot be resolved because of inadequacies. Isn't that a sweet mantra? You know, you can't fix it because you can't fix it. You know, there's nothing else you can do. The inability to correct at its potential for suffering. Isn't that funny? I mean, here you have this transpersonal line. It's a very difficult fourth line. And the thing that makes it difficult is the basic nature of what a fourth line is. The fourth line is an opportunist. That fourth line is an opportunist. It's really there to wait for the right opportunity to be able to externalize. But it's also the abdicator. You see, the abdicator fails only when the majority says it fails. So the externalizer of a correction fails if they don't get enough support. If they don't get enough in the collective that agree with them. And then they truly suffer. They see that something needs to be corrected, but they are powerless themselves. They are an 18 without the 58. They are powerless to do anything unless they have that energy. And inherent in that is their suffering. The incompetency is because they cannot do it alone. And this is the magic of correction. If everybody could read this clearly who carried the 18th gate, they would really understand something. That correction is about a collective process, a collective need for correction that can be satisfied. And that, yes, one person can be the source of that insight into what correction is necessary, but it will take the collective will to bring that about. The earth exalted, given this negative position, survival through suffering. Now look, the secret here is being able to meet the right energy, to get to the point of manifestation. And yet you're only able to do that as yourself with your particular gift of the collective when you live out your own nature. It doesn't mean you will not suffer, but you sure won't suffer as much. That is, you won't suffer randomly out of the chaos of trying to connect with everything and fix everything. You will suffer that without the other, and even with the other, it may be exceedingly difficult to get the correction across. I mean, do you have any idea how many people on this planet at this moment carry inside of them theories that they would like to put into practice? It's mind-boggling. And we would live in absolute chaos if all of that was going around, aside from the fact that we would never have the resources for it. The resources for anything collective have to be vast. So it's built into the collective process to suffer from not getting your chance to impact on the collective. All you can do is continue your process as yourself and wait. Mercury in detriment, indecision and anxiety, and no escape from misfortune. The demands of correction and its potential to generate anxiety. You know, when you see something that needs to be corrected and nobody does anything about it, you can go mad. You can just go mad. The 18th gate stays here in the world and stable when that suffering is collective in nature and not personal. You can suffer for the collective. That is, you can suffer that the correction cannot be in the collective and help all those people, but not suffer because you couldn't get it done. This is a projector channel. And as a projector channel, as the type, it has to be recognized. And in this case, recognized by the collective. When you get to the last 7 minutes and 30 seconds of the fourth line, we have a change in the cross configuration, the birth cross configuration, and the 52-58 is replaced with the 38-39. And we have the juxtaposition cross of correction, the 18, the 17, the 39, and the 38. You can see that this will be very provocative. This cross includes the 39, the 38. It's going to be provocative. You've got the fighter, and you've got the need as a fixed fate to externalize and be the incompetent at that. You know, on this wheel, you have everything. And no matter how hard you try to take this example and make it only one side of the coin, you can never do that because it's not true. The fact that somebody is going to be fixed on correction and that they are going to struggle in ever being able to complete that themselves does not mean that they do not and will not bring value to their lives or society, but that they're deeply fixed in it, so that their life is fixed to that suffering and that anxiety. But if it wasn't, we wouldn't know anything about it. And the totality would not have this as part of its complete being. At the moment that you see the macrocosm of the global consciousness field, you know, that's the moment that you recognize that everything has its place. There is no other possible way to see that. And there is no possible way to say that one in all of that is better or more important than any other. There's no way to morally judge any of that. It is impossible. I cannot judge my T cells for being vicious murderers inside of my body. I cannot do that. I cannot start doing peace marches down there. I'll drop dead in a minute. So when you look at any line, at any incarnation, at any information, never get caught in that morality that says, oh, this is bad, let's eliminate it. Because all you're doing is scarring the totality and denying it its potential. The left angle cross is the left angle cross of upheaval. You bet. The 18.5, the 17.5, you've got the challenge, you've got the opinions, you've got the provocation, you got the fighting capacity, the struggling capacity. This is upheaval. When we came to this cross the first time, I called them shit disturbers, and somebody told me that that was not an Americanism. It's a Canadianism. You know, they really disturb you. They're the kind of people who disturb you while you're sitting on the toilet, which is the worst kind of disturbance. They create upheaval. And of course, the line is called therapy. Well, how does most therapy, most experimental therapy in the late 20th century is about turning people's worlds around? You know, shaking them up, giving them the big upheaval to try to straighten them out. Like homeopathic doses. Therapy. The strength to recognize a problem and to accept that it is beyond one's power to solve it alone. How smart, finally. I mean, this is the classic 5 position anyway. That is, you wait for the right opportunity, you wait for the crisis, has to be practical, with the coda here that you cannot do it alone. You have to wait for those people. And of course, this is the 5th line of universalization. This is the call to the collective to correct. That does not mean that that correction is necessary, useful, or valuable. Thus the name cross of upheaval. And that up after the upheaval, you may have to go all the way back to the ground again to straighten it all out. But the upheaval is there to test the strength and authority of the pattern that exists. Saturn exalted the wisdom to both seek and provide guidance. The potential for correction and judgment through relationships. In other words, in working together with the other is the capacity to be clear in what is of value to the collective and ultimately very healthy. By the way, this line can be very unstable. Uranus in detriment. This is the 1959 generation, I believe. The mental patient. Chronic instability and potential madness. It's a nice line to read to people. Where relationships cannot assist in correction, the potential of mental instability. Where relationships cannot. That doesn't say where they can. It says where they cannot. Then that leads to instability. And the thing to recognize about this transpersonal line, in this very transpersonal collective process, is that it is the other that matters more than anything else. And that's based on how you enter in. You can never know who's for you until you're living out your type, your definition, and your authority. That's human design. I mean, those 3 things, that is the basis of human design. And the moment that you can live that out, then any one of these lines operates properly. Here, there is no madness when you're with the right people. There is no instability when you are with the right people. And of course, for the 5th line, that means that they have to be very careful about not being seduced instead of being the seducer. The 6th line. Buddhahood. Hate this line. People hear this line, and if they're male, they get an erection, you know. Hi, Buddhahood. The perfected form. Think about the nature of being a 6th line here. You know, you go through this process of the 3rd line correction. The zealot. You know, you try to correct everything. You try to correct your mother. You try to correct your father. You know, you get kicked, you get slapped, you get put in your place, you get told to shut up. And you end up, you know, holding within you all of these criticisms and all of these things that you see, and you climb up onto your hill and you want to be left alone. And what you're really looking for is what can possibly be corrected. But the whole thing is If you're a collective, logical person and you're not contributing, then there's going to be a lot of forces that don't like you and expect you to contribute. And the only way that you cannot contribute is if that collective decides that that's okay. So take the example of the Indian sadhu. You know, if you look at the sadhu without the diet, everything looks very spiritual and it looks very individual. Here is this person that has disconnected themselves from the world and they're high up there on the hills having their spiritual trip. But the collective has to fill the rice bowl that they survive by. And without the permission of the collective, the sadhu is going to have to become a breatharian and they can bury him later. So the only way that this sixth line is allowed to step away from contributing is that it's spoiled. So the 18.6 is here to be spoiled. Don't worry about that. It's all okay. If you're a man, that means that you're going to be caught in a mother fixation. That is, you're going to need mature women in your life. Rarely are they going to be your own age, though that's possible if they're very mature. But usually they're going to be much older than you, and you're going to be their sonny boy. You're so wonderful, you're terrific, let me spoil you. And of course, if you're a woman, you're going to get your sugar daddy. You know, you're going to get this older man in your life, or more mature man in your life, you know, who thinks that you're absolutely wonderful and spoils the hell out of you. If you're an 18.6 and you don't wait to be spoiled, you're never going to enjoy what that's all about, and you're going to spend your whole life whining. They can be great whiners if nobody spoils them. And what they're critical of is not being spoiled. They're funny creatures. Mars exalted the Buddhist state of the eternal child and the energy to find new horizons to avoid stasis. The potential of the perfected form through correction. Now, this perfected form, you know, it comes from the mature force being the protector. So there's nothing to challenge. I mean, the whole thing to understand about this line is that the 18th gate is there to challenge Ma-Pa. They're there to challenge established authority, the Oedipa-Electra complex. But in the 6th line, they don't need to challenge authority because they realize that unless you get the commitment of others, it doesn't work anyway. And why bother? And the only way they can live that way is if they have Ma and Pa spoiling them and telling them that everything is okay. Then they have nothing to challenge. The moon in detriment. The mundane application of the above, the ability to tap public opinion and share methodology. The potential to share the values of correction with others. Remember that this Buddhist state of being spoiled means that instead of having to pay attention to what needs to be challenged all the time, they can look out at the world and see what needs to be corrected and challenged. In other words, they eliminate the personal by being spoiled and are left with only the collective as a viewpoint. They're very healthy in that way, but they have to be spoiled. And if they're not spoiled, then the confusion comes in between the personal and the collective, and the basic suffering of the 18 gets revived again. When you get to that point of being spoiled, then you have a chance to develop your depth. And it's the irony of our process is that it takes so much time to prove something, to really understand it, and to get it into the whole collective process. It takes time. The 18-6 is liberated from its moment-by-moment correction process by being spoiled by authority. So it has time to focus on collective correction. But the ability to crystallize that correction into a solution, this is in the 48th gate.